Breakfast, it is 5 to 7. Now, the fastest growing age group amongst new teachers isn't people in their 20s or 30s, it's those in their 50s. There's an increase of 67% amongst the over 50s in the past 2 years alone. What's driving the uptake and why are older people opting for a career change into education? Well, Lucy Kellaway was a journalist at the Financial Times. She switched to teaching economics and co-founded Now Teach, which is an organisation helping others to retrain for the profession. Morning, Lucy.
Morning.
Why do you think this is such an appeal for people who are later on in their careers to go into teaching?
Look, when I switched to teaching in my late 50s, my motivations were completely different to what they were as a young thing. You know, I'd done the FT, I'd done a full career, and you're looking for something that gives you something else, not necessarily the money or the glamour, but something that really means something. And I mean, I know that sounds cheesy, but it's just simply true that after a day of teaching, even if you haven't given lessons that were that brilliant, you think, kids learned something that they didn't know at the beginning of the day. And that is incredibly rewarding, even before you factor in the fact that being with teenagers all day is a terrific laugh.
And what do you think older people bring to the classroom? Presumably their experience working maybe in business or something else?
Yeah, they bring masses. I mean, if you've only been in education your whole life, you've been in school, uni, and then you trained to be a teacher, you have no hinterland. You don't really know anything about how the world works. So as an economics teacher, every time a new subject was introduced, I had all of that experience from having been on the FT for 32 years that I could bring to the kids. I think you also have a sort of confidence and resilience. I mean, becoming a teacher isn't a walk in the park. Most teachers will tell you that they cried at some point during teacher training. I'm very happy to say I didn't, which doesn't mean to say I found it easy, of course, but I think that we have that. I think we're also better at talking to parents, because many of us have been parents ourselves. So I think there are all sorts of ways in which we're not necessarily better than young teachers, but we're different. And that diversity really has to be precious.
I just wonder as well, though, on the downside, if it's more tiring when you're older, having to deal with, because you're not just teaching, are you? Let's be honest, teenagers can be an absolute nightmare at times. They can be throwing things at each other. They can not be listening. They're great at the back chat. I know my rights, all of that nonsense. That must be exhausting the older you get.
Well, I think I'm going to slightly call you out on ageism here. The idea that...
I'm just thinking about myself, Lucy. I'm putting myself in the idea of being a teacher now.
You know what? I think the people who are really, really shattered and find it almost impossible to teach people who have got young children and they've been up half the night with their babies, or the really young ones who may have been clubbing all weekend.
That's a fair point.
Us lot in our 50s totally able to cope with teaching. Although teaching is tiring for everyone. So I'm not going to let you get away with that.
No, it's fun. I was just thinking from my own point of view, living with teenagers and how exhausting they are. And the idea of a classroom with 30 of them is just, but maybe it's just I'm not made for teaching. Retention, we know, is a massive issue for teaching right now. Does it become less of an issue because if you are going to it later in life, you're not going to be doing it potentially for, well, you're obviously not going to be doing it for 30 years.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we're proudest of at Now Teach is that we not only persuade people to come and become teachers, but we've been really good at getting them to stay in the classroom. And we do that by having a sort of network and by supporting them in those moments when things are difficult. So we've had really, really good retention. But you're absolutely right that what is different for us than for very young teachers is that, I mean, certainly anyone who's teaching in London may find that they can't even think about affording to buy their own property. So they leave, they move, they go and do something else.
Yeah,
for most of us, we've already got our own houses. We have that security.
Yeah, it makes it easier, doesn't it, Lucy?
We're not looking to leap into something else.
Yeah, Lucy, it's been great to speak to you. Real insight. Thank you so much. Lucy Kellaway there, was a journalist at the FT, now a teacher in economics. Fascinated to hear from you this morning. If you went to teaching later in life, tell us all about it.